Hi, everyone. Today, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ash Attia. He is CEO of Bionic Vision Technologies, an Australian company that develops visual prosthetics with the goal of helping to restore vision to the blind. He received an MS in biomedical engineering and then later a PhD in medical sciences. Before his work with Bionic Vision Technologies, Dr. Attia held a variety of upper management level roles across the medtech and health tech sectors. So, Dr. Attia, can you tell us more about your story? I'd love to hear a bit about your background and kind of what brought you to where you are today.
Thank you very much. So, look, I grew up in the United States, actually, since I was a young boy. And I started my, professional career after my first Bachelor of Electronics Engineering in New York, specializing actually at that time in medical technology. At that time, there was no such program as called biomedical engineering, but you can specialize in a particular aspect of electronics and computer engineering. I have done my master's in surgery and in biomedical and bioengineering at the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey, and then a PhD in medicine. After that, my interest has always lied in the application of engineering into medicine. And that is really since I have graduated in 1989. My roles have encompassed really what you now call neuroprosthetics and neuroscience. Back then, it wasn't really called that. It was still called, I guess, the application of medicine into engineering or bioengineering, and started my career really heading a group of clinicians and engineers to design what at the time was science fiction, called an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. This is the time where a defibrillator was just a very big machine that comes with the ambulance. Fine, perhaps, for those who have a heart attack, but for the millions and millions of people who used to die from what we call sudden cardiac death, which is an electrical problem of the heart, they had no option because they only have seconds to live. So the idea of what if we could have a very big defibrillator turned into a very tiny defibrillator that gets implanted into people and recognizes very quickly that they are basically going into sudden cardiac death, and revive them and shock them, all happens within 30 seconds. Can we do that? Science fiction again at the time. Today, this is a commercial reality. So I headed the team that really developed and manufactured and launched the very first implantable defibrillator the world has ever known. From there, I went further into the cardiac field of working on developing and commercializing what is called a left ventricular assist device. What that is something that would keep those people who are awaiting a transplant but cannot get a heart. As you know, the waiting times can be quite long, 6 to 12 months in very developed countries to maybe 5 years or never into other countries. How do you keep these people alive and give them a relatively better quality of life than the drugs? Because drugs, we know, don't work for those people. So those who are in need of a transplant go through stages. Drugs only help stage 1 and 2. Once you get into the latter stages, nothing helps you unless you get a heart, and that's not easily to come by. At any rate, once again, I headed the team that designed and launched one of the very first left ventricular assist device, which is essentially an electronic heart pump that you can implant in the heart and have it take over the heart and do the function of the heart either for as long as the patient lives or for as long as the patient is still on a transplant list and until they get a heart. And the story then went from there, specializing in new technologies that allows the paradigm shift in heart and lung transplants. It was then at that time that I was approached by Bionic Vision Technology board, because Bionic Vision Technology really, we found that quite a lot of the technologies that has been used not only in the cardiac arena, which is my specialty, but also to some respect in the cochlear implants, which, by the way, cochlear technology stemmed out of the very first group I headed when we were designing the very first implantable defibrillator. Fancy that. It's something that is in the heart and treating heart and cardiac rhythm, spun out, and we found application for it in the ear for the profoundly deaf. So having all that experience, Bionic Vision Technologies and the technologies that we are developing with this, which is nothing short of miraculous and really life-changing, and somehow would have sounded like science fiction 10 years ago, but today it's a reality. We can give people some functional vision who have completely lost their vision and been blind for years due to a genetic condition that they are born with. That's the story.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a really interesting journey so far, and you've got to work on lots of groundbreaking projects and developments. Going back to something that you said earlier when you were talking about your education, I haven't heard too much about the Masters of Surgery degree. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that was like and what are some of the things that you had to work on while you were in that degree?
Oh, yes, of course. That was a combination between the University of New Jersey Medicine, Dental and Medicine, and the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I have done my electronics engineering. And in that, you combine the skills of surgery and the skills of bioengineering. So you learn both many things that relates to surgery and implanting devices, and also research into areas of surgery that are still, I don't want to say the word archaic, but the standard of care is not really up to what it is supposed to be or should be. And that was, again, back in 1988. So that is a program that is between a medical school and an engineering school. One of the first, I think it was at the time.
Yeah, that seems like a really useful program. And I think it's really important for surgeons to know about engineering and for engineers, especially in this space that you're working in, to know about surgery. And so I'm really excited to hear about that degree. And then another quick question about your background, like what sparked your initial interest or involvement in neuroscience or neurotechnology? Has the brain been something you've always been interested in, or did you first become interested when you started looking at how that heart technology can be also utilized in the cochlear implants, or was it something that really started to spark your interest after you started to hear about BVT?
I have been very interested in this field since my last year of bachelor's degree, and that was in 1983. And that is sparked by a very dear professor of mine at the time. His name was Professor Stanley Reisman, who really was the probably worldwide expert in the application of electronics engineering into medicine at the time. And he was very much specializing in heart technology. And as I did my last year under him and also my master's degree under him, he really sparked my interest in that area. He used to get me into the Veterans Administration Hospital in New Jersey with him to do some very basic work, soldering and creating certain circuits based on designs and so on. It was really through him that I became extremely interested in that area, and I've never left it since then.
Well, I think the field is lucky to have you, and I'm glad that you crossed paths with that professor and that he kind of inspired you to go down this path. And so my next question focuses a little bit more on bionic vision technologies. I was wondering if you could kind of give us some more details on the background and the timeline of this company and how things started and what's happening with BVT today?
Thank you very much. So, in a nutshell, before my time in 2010, the company received, not the company, but the industry and the researchers and a whole bunch of university and top minds in Australia have received a grant from the federal government. At the time, the prime minister of this country had this idea, look, if Australia can produce Cochlear and ResMed and so on, can we do something for vision? And that was called, actually, at the time in 2010, Vision 2020 project. So they've looked at quite a number of things in vision, and one of the very clear unmet needs that has absolutely no alternative and no treatment, nothing at all, was that there's millions of people who are born with a very good sight, so they can see very well. And if they inherit one, and I did say one only, out of any of 360 plus genes, if they do that, as they go to a working age, they would completely lose their sight. It's a disease called retinitis pigmentosa. It destroys the cells and the photoreceptors that are in the back of your retina and mine, which essentially turns light into vision. And once they are born with any one of those genes, ultimately, and as they reach working age group, they will lose their vision. It is the number one disease responsible for vision loss and blindness in working age in the world today. And there was absolutely nothing that is an alternative that could give them back their sight. Stem cell would not do it. Gene therapy at best might attend to one or two of the genes, but there's no gene therapy that could attend to 360 plus genes. And a quarter of these people, actually, you don't even know what genes exactly they have inherited in order to have been very unfortunate with this disease. Now, just to give you an idea, the prevalence of this disease in the Western world, as in the United States, Europe, etc., 1 in 3,000 people roughly are born with this. Now, to add to that, in China and India and Middle East and so on, the incidence is nearly 4 to 5 times that, meaning 1 in 700 people are born with it. The obvious question is why? And the answer is we don't know. We think it is because of family marriages or intermarriages within families and things like that. But to be honest, we really don't know why the prevalence is just so high. So Bionic Vision Technologies then started with this grant and started researching what in vision, particularly in blindness, that we could probably tackle. And throughout a lot of trial and errors, this kind of condition, retinitis pigmentosa, looked like it was something that really could be tackled. And some of the technologies that we could use is to be able to bypass these photoreceptors in the back of the retina that have been destroyed and go directly into the brain, the optic nerve, and stimulate the back of the retina, just as we stimulate the heart or just as we stimulate the cochlea for those who have profound hearing loss. And potentially we could give back some vision to those people. Now, fast forward to today, we have done 2 thorough clinical trials. One was the first in man. Of course, before first in man, we had to do maybe 200 or 300 or so testing on animals and etc. to see that this is doable. And we found out that it is safe, it can be done. Then we've done the first in man with a number of patients, and that was fantastic. And we followed those patients for over 2 years. Our last trial was in 2017. And we followed those patients, of course, even up until now. That's almost more than 7 years on, and they're all alive and doing well. and have vision that they can do so many things with that you and I would take for granted. They, of course, to them, it's miraculous because they've been blind for years. Now, bionic vision technology is gearing towards the very last iteration of that system, which would be called the Generation 3, which is the generation that we intend to go into a pivotal trial with in the United States and Europe. And of course, based on that, on the results of this trial, we would gain commercial approval so that we can make this available to all those millions of people who have been extremely unfortunate and been hit with this severe and really debilitating condition through no fault of their own.
The technology that you guys are working on seems like an amazing application of neural stimulation to curing or at least helping to repair vision loss. And wow, I'm just amazed to hear that story. Additionally, I think that the specific cause of blindness that you guys are targeting seems like a great one to target because, as you mentioned, the incidence of that cause is quite high, both in the Western world and even higher in the Eastern world, as you mentioned. And I'm wishing you and your team the best of luck on these upcoming trials working towards commercialization that you mentioned, because it really does sound like your technology can be super helpful for a lot of people, even up to millions, as you said. To dive a little bit deeper into the technology side of things, so I've heard of a couple other like labs and companies working on visual prosthetics, and so what differentiates BVT's work and technology from some of these other groups that are working on similar prosthetics?
So very excellent groups are working, and many of them throughout the world. But they are at least, I would say, 5 or 10 years behind where bionic vision is. Not at all through any fault of their own, but they don't have a system that they can yet implant in a human, let alone have they done any trials. So these things, of course, take time. Secondly, is the unique feature of what we have is the following. First of all, it's a system that can be easily, through simple surgery, any retinal surgeon can do it, gets inserted into a space that is behind the retina where you don't damage any of the remaining vision or any of the cells. So it can be taken in and out rather than what people have tried before, which is to stick some things on the retina. And of course, it cannot be reversed and you cannot take it out, etc. Second is that we have a super duper vision processing software, which is really the brain behind the whole thing, that allows us to stimulate the back of the retina in such a way that we can then communicate directly with the optic nerve and tell it what to interpret and tell it what's in front of the patients in a way that is, of course, replaces the function of these photoreceptors that I've just mentioned have been entirely destroyed by this genetic condition. Last but not least is that when we implant the system of ours, we do not exclude the patients from being involved later on in any gene therapy or stem cell therapy or any other therapies that might be of benefit in the future, where, of course, most other people, once get a system that is, of course, non-reversible, etc., you just simply cannot have that patient involved in anything else. So there's quite a lot of advantage. Of course, I did not mention the elephant in the room, and that is the fact that we've done it and we've tried it on people who have been now walking around since 2012. No one has even come close to that. So that is what is different about us. I guess I will also mention, and it's worth mentioning, that due to all the things I've just described, and as a recognition by the FDA that no one has anything close to this, that this has all the hallmark of something really revolutionary and extraordinary, and it would be the only system available worldwide to meet a need which is currently unmet. We have been granted a FDA breakthrough designation.
That's definitely exciting to hear about that breakthrough designation. And as you walked me through the technology there, I was getting more and more excited because that's super innovative to the technology that you guys have to be able to do all of this stimulation and surgical implant without damaging the retina at all. And I'm sure that the patients, the users would very much appreciate that aspect of things. And then additionally, the fact that, as you mentioned, the surgery is doable by just about any retinal surgeon, that I think that will help with getting it out to more and more patients. And you also got to love that aspect of not precluding the patients from other sorts of therapies to help with their vision. And sometimes some of these patients might really benefit from kind of that multimodal approach, having the bionic vision technologies implant as well as some sort of gene therapy or something of that sort. And finally, I'm really excited to hear about all these patients, these few patients that have already had it implanted in them for years, and it's been working, and that they're walking around and having improved vision, and yeah, I'm just super excited about the technology all around.
There has been a number of publications, of course, which has been out there to show you what these patients can do now. And I'll only just mention two or three things out of hundreds of things that they can do. But the fact that you can recognize your loved ones is amazing. To them, the fact that you can recognize street signs and traffic lights and be able to find an empty chair on a table rather than you sitting on top of someone is to them astounding. But the most important that we find is the fact that they all regain back their confidence and their ability to interact socially rather than keep themselves at home and not wanting to go out because they just simply can't deal comfortably with people or feel somewhat of course, an inferiority given the fact that they are blind. The fact that it gives them this psychological boost, we think it's one of the most important that you can give them, because now they can go out, they can interact, they have confidence, they become social, they can do lots of things, as I said, that you and I wouldn't even think twice about.
Those three that you mentioned are super important. I think, being able to recognize your loved ones is super important from an emotional perspective, and looking at the road signs or finding an open chair is super important from a functional perspective. And as you mentioned, us humans are social creatures, and so having that confidence to get back into more social situations and get out of the house more is, I agree, also amazingly helpful for these people, and kind of a follow-on effect where they are getting improvements in their vision, and it looks like it's causing improvements in many other aspects of their life as well.
Yes, indeed.
And so another question that I wanted to ask was, I was reading the Bionic Vision Technologies website, and it mentioned that the implant system is a bit similar in concept and design to the Cochlear implant. And then I also noticed that some of the members of your upper management team have also worked at Cochlear. And so I was wondering if the two companies have any sort of affiliation, or is it kind of just that the people that are interested in these kind of things tend to run in the same circles sometimes?
It's both. We don't have an official affiliation, but I can tell you that the first two trials we've done with the Generation 1 Bionic Eye and with the Generation 2 Bionic Eye were done using the stimulator on the skull here that you see with the cochlear implants, and the lead that is used to put in the cochlea implant from Cochlear. We got that from Cochlear just to see that we could deliver a signal and etc. Now, of course, as we are going into the Bionic 3, we are using, of course, our own implant system, which will combine these magnets. So instead of two on the skull, it will only be one. And of course, different set of electrodes that stimulate the retina. Of course, it will be a different way than you stimulate the cochlea in the ear. That's really as far as the affiliation is concerned. But what you mentioned first is probably even more true. Those who are in the neuroscience and stimulation and the heart technology and cochlear technology and so on, I like to call ourselves, without any pun intended, we are the scattered children of Israel. You will find us everywhere, really. And we would have all run into each other through our entire career. Even people in the radiation therapy, people in the interventional cardiology, people in the ResMed, hearing space, cardiac space, we would have all either worked together, known each other from somewhere. It's a very small, as you know, and close-knit specialization that I say is probably just because. But also the fact that we use a stimulator and an implant and a receiver, etc., that gets implanted on right under the skin here, just like you see the cochlea. Profoundly deaf people are being implanted with. Obviously, the expertise of people who have been through Cochlear is, of course, for us very important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, the field definitely is super interconnected and people are always running into each other and working together. And yeah, I've been finding that out more and more as I explore more about this field. And that also makes sense regarding how you would start with maybe something from Cochlear to first prove out the product. And now that you have some proof, you're moving towards a system that's a bit more optimized for the specific goals of you and your team. And so talking a little bit about the future, what's next for Bionic Vision Technologies? I know you mentioned I think you called it was called the Bionic 3 is going to be coming out, and then that's going to be tested with the regulatory bodies in the US and Europe. And so assuming that goes well, what do you hope to see over the next 3 to 7 years out of BVT?
Thank you very much. Number one priority for us is to get the Generation 3 ready to go into the pivotal trial, which would be the last trial required by us in order to gain commercial approval by the FDA, European Authority, Australian Authority, etc. And make this available to really the people who very much deserving to have it and regain back functional vision. What's after that? The world is our oyster, to be honest, because right now we are only focused in this company on those who are at the very end stage of retinitis pigmentosa, those who have completely lost their vision. So they have absolutely bare light or no light perception whatsoever. I can tell you that, and I'm confident in saying that we will never run out of ideas after that. We can look maybe at earlier stages of this disease. We could look at other inherited retinal diseases in the vision area. We could look at so many other things. But for now, we are very focused on what we know will get us the regulatory approval and get this product and system to all those who are really deserve and need to have it, but just currently can't have anything.
Yeah, that makes sense that it would be a very important time to focus on those regulatory approvals, and definitely looking forward to keeping an eye on you and your team and hoping to see good news come back about these approvals going forward in the future, and excited to see what you guys do next after that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Now kind of zooming out a little bit, I had a few questions about what the day-to-day life of a biotech executive is like. So it sounds like you've definitely, at various points in your career, been deep into the technology and the engineering side of things. And now that you've risen up to an executive role, is the day-to-day more skewed to things like business strategy or partnerships, deals with investors, and regulatory? Or do you often find yourself diving deep into the technology, road mapping, clinical testing side of things as well?
All of the above with Bionic Vision Technologies. Very much into the clinical sides and the patient and and what we need to do to get this product into the pivotal trial, what's optimum for the patients, and the technology, etc. That's definitely a key. Of course, dealing with investors and strategy and so on is a key. But I must say, at this stage in bionic vision technology, none of it is really about revenue or sales or anything like that. We are very much focused on getting something that is safe and effective, and that we can provide it to the millions of people who need it. So for us, clinical technology, patient safety, regulatory, reimbursement, etc., is really what occupies most of our time, as well as, of course, investor focus, etc., because nothing we could do here without funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like there's lots of balls to juggle, and it seems like you're doing really well at it. For people a little bit earlier in their career, maybe students or earlier mid-career professionals, do you have any advice or tips on how they can get involved in the field of neurotech? And maybe you could start off by talking about the field of neurotech in general, but then I know that the visual prosthetic space is a really not like a huge space right now, but also what if they wanted to get involved specifically with visual prosthetics?
Probably regardless of whether the field definitely visual process for ophthalmology is very, very small. We will probably be the only device, as an implantable device, that would ever be commercialized in the field of ophthalmology. I'm talking about an implantable device, not in the front of the eye with lenses and or drugs or anything. Really, what my advice is to people is that try it, start really without much expectations, and see if you like it. I have always said that the field of bioengineering or medical, engineering and neuroscience and so on, I have always felt that it's either in your blood or it isn't. You would either love it, and if you love it, you will put up with the hours and the and all the issues that are associated with it. It's a different ball game than computer engineering or power engineering or semiconductors or something like that. This is a field that you have to have one thing in front of you all the time, and that's patience. Mistakes cost people's lives. That's not necessarily true in a lot of other aspects in engineering. So, you try it first. If you love it, that's what you should do, because you'll wake up every morning loving it and wanting to do that kind of work. If you find yourself not so interested in it, please don't do it, because it would be very difficult emotionally, mentally, etc., and even financially at times, that you'd get up every morning and tackle something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super important to have that passion for the field, but I also agree with the sentiment that you had, that sometimes the only way to figure out if you have that passion is to at least give it a try and explore and see what you like. And if this isn't something you like, then there's no issues with moving on and finding the next thing, and to each their own, as they say. Now looking a bit further out into the future of neurotechnology, I was wondering if you had any predictions for the field of neurotechnology over perhaps the next 20 years or so. What do you think the field will look like going forward?
Just walk into a hospital, you'll know. This is where medicine and healthcare is going. I don't know if I could say it any more than that. Just walk in, you'll see. It's all about technology, neuroscience, neurostimulation that is now being in application of so many diseases that we never even thought we could tackle. Now we can, with neurotechnology and neurostimulation and so on. It's the future.
Yeah, I agree. Especially these past few years, this past decade or so, it seems that neurotechnology is getting utilized for more and more indications, and they're trying it out for things that we would have never really expected it could be utilized for. And I agree, it is the future, and I think it's a very awesome and exciting time ahead, and hopefully this field is able to help lots and lots of people. That was the last technical question I had for you today. One other thing I wanted to ask is, would you like any of the listeners to contact you for further discussion after the episode? And if so, who should reach out to you? How can they reach out to you? And what topics or reasons should they reach out to you about?
Very happy for them to contact me. It's on the website. It's info at Bionic Viz and so on, and that will come to us, and we'll be very happy to accommodate and answer any questions that people may have.